Hi, subscribe to Life Stories so you don't miss new stories. Get the story of one husband whose suspicions of his wife's infidelity turned out to be true. His heart and mind were engulfed in rage and disappointment when he discovered that his wife was cheating on him, their children, and their marriage. Let's dive into this story to understand the events that unfolded in his life. It was several weeks ago that it happened. It was a Thursday morning, and I was up trying to get our two kids ready for school when the phone rang. But since it was only 7:30, I wondered who could be calling. Caller ID said it was an out-of-area code number, which made me wonder even more. "Hello," I spoke into the mouthpiece. "John, it's me. It was Claire, my wife." Let's wonder what she wants, I thought, since we just talked together the evening before. My wife works as a representative for a small marketing and printing firm in our medium-sized city and travels a lot. I'm more or less the caregiver for our kids as I work at home with only occasional forays into our office in town. Anyway, it works for us, and between the two of us, we make pretty good money. We have a nice 4-bedroom home in the suburbs with a pool and a nice bunch of friends. "What's up, Claire?" I asked. "I've got a problem, honey. My purse was stolen last evening when I went down to the hotel lobby to get a newspaper. You need to cancel our credit cards and get them to issue new ones as soon as possible. I've talked to Joy, my boss, and she's going to get a new company American Express card sent to me overnight so I can have it by tomorrow before I check out. She's also wiring some cash to tide me over. You're usually very careful with your purse." "What happened?" I was a little careless and set it down on the cashier's counter while I went to get more reading material, and when I got back, it was gone. The cashier says she was distracted by another customer and didn't see anything. My driver's license is gone too, but the hotel is sending out someone to check garbage containers in the area, and I hope they find it or I'll have to take a cab to my meeting today. "Okay, I'll take care of the credit cards as quickly as I can." "I'm sorry about being so careless, honey. Hopefully, it won't cost us any more than the $200 or so that I had in my purse. The other cards I had can be replaced in time. Most of my makeup was up in the room, so I'll be ready for my presentation this morning. How are the kids? I miss you guys." That's what happened about 6 weeks ago. I managed to get the credit cards canceled before any charges appeared, and they did find her purse with her driver's license and other non-credit cards intact, so I just forgot about it. Our lives went on. Today, I'm looking at a statement from my wife's account at Fidelity. She maintains a separate investment account because that's where she deposited the inheritance after the passing of her parents in an auto accident a few years ago. I tried to respect her privacy regarding this account, but I was searching for our home insurance policy and came across a folder with the monthly statements on her account. I knew when her parents died, the inheritance was about $350,000, and I wondered what the value of the account was now. I was pleased to see that it was now in excess of $400,000. As I glanced at the statement, I noticed a withdrawal from the money market account of $3,000 about 6 weeks ago, and I wondered what she'd used the money for. My curiosity was aroused, and I went into the details of her money market account and found she'd written a check for that amount to a jewelry store in the city where she'd lost her purse a couple of days after she'd been there. What did she buy in a jewelry store? I wondered. She hadn't bought anything for me, or I hadn't heard her mention anything about buying jewelry for anyone else. She has a brother, but I didn't think he warranted a $3,000 present. After several moments of thought, I went to the PC and found the jewelry store's website and noted the phone number. Picking up the phone, I dialed the store. The phone was answered by a woman who identified the store and then asked how she could assist me. I identified myself and the transaction I was interested in, then explained that we'd had a problem with the purchase and wondered if there was a store warranty on it. She took a minute to look it up on her PC and asked me what appears to be the problem with the rings. Rings? I asked myself. What rings would she be buying? I was fortunate when the girl on the phone suddenly spoke up again. Oh, I remember the purchase. The lady was quite distraught when she came in and told us her wedding and engagement rings had been stolen, and she wanted replacements. It took us quite a while to find 2 rings that would satisfy her. She used a company credit card as collateral and mailed us a check a few days later. You say that there's a problem with them? We offer a 90-day store warranty on them. Is the diamond setting loose? She replaced her engagement and wedding rings. I was confused. She never mentioned losing them, only that her purse had been stolen. I had to think more about this. That, I told the girl. I need to talk with my wife about this and get back to you. I'll call back later, okay? Goodbye. She sounded puzzled, but not as puzzled as I was. Obviously, the rings must have been in her purse when it was stolen. Why would they have been in her purse unless she didn't want others to know she was married? There were no restrictions on marriage as far as her job that I was aware of. However, if she wanted to appear unmarried in a social situation, I rationalized it could mean that she wanted to be a player when she was away from home. The thought gave me an immediate queasy feeling in my stomach. We'd been married 11 years and had 2 children. Jeremy 7 and Melissa 6, and I thought we had an ideal marriage and family. Our love life was good, or so I thought. Why would she go looking for sex outside our marriage? She usually traveled once a month and was away 2 or 3 nights at a distant city, so if she wanted to play, she would feel safe doing it. Then the loss of her rings must have really scared her. I had bought them when I wasn't making as much money, and they weren't fancy, so it wouldn't have been terribly expensive to purchase a good likeness of them. She could have filed a claim with our insurance company, but I would have most likely found out about it if she did have her purse stolen in the hotel. She must have reported it. I wondered what she told them about the loss. I found the number of the hotel and gave them a call. I asked them if they had a record of my wife's purse being stolen. When they indicated they did have a written record of the incident, I asked if they could fax me a copy At within a few minutes, I had copied the report, which was made and signed by Claire. In it, she described how her purse had been stolen while she was dancing in the lounge. And she left the purse in the booth where she'd been sitting, and it was gone when she got back to her seat. The hotel had noted that Claire had not wanted the police involved. And my thoughts were going wild with the implications of what I discovered. She had lied to me by omission by not telling me about her rings being stolen, and had lied when she told me it had been stolen in the gift shop. Maybe there was some other explanation for this, but I couldn't picture a different scenario than the thoughts that were going around in my head. I knew I'd have to find out what the loss of those rings meant, or it would drive me crazy wondering. But it was becoming obvious the rings were in her purse while she was dancing with some unknown male. She'd been on a trip since then a couple of weeks ago, and was due to go on another trip in a couple of days. I needed to get a little more information on the itinerary for her next trip. I wanted to find out what she did in the evenings when she was away from home. If she had been being intimate with other men, maybe the loss of her rings was enough to scare her from doing anything more. I knew if I found out she'd been unfaithful to me, it would probably be the end of our marriage, although the impact on the kids was something I didn't want to think about. She was an excellent mother, but I couldn't allow her to have custody if we split and she was going to be traveling around. My mind was going a mile a minute, trying to think of ways to find other clues concerning her faithfulness. What other clues might tell me what she was doing on her trips? Did she sleep with them naked or use condoms? I would bet she had them use condoms, as she wouldn't chance bringing something home or getting pregnant. I'd had a vasectomy after our second child was born, and a pregnancy would be an absolute no. She couldn't trust the man to bring condoms, so she must carry her own supply. Where would she keep them? She wouldn't keep them at home or in her car, so she would have to keep them in her office at work. They would probably be with her when she left for her business trips. She always carried her business papers, laptop, and presentation materials in a large briefcase that she kept at her office. However, if she were leaving on an early morning flight, she would bring the bag home the evening before and then take it in her suitcase to the airport. That was the key. I had to find an opportunity to search that briefcase before she left. I hoped her next trip required an early morning flight. I decided I would have to be calm about this. So I didn't alert her that there was something wrong. I need not have worried because once the kids got home from school, I was too busy to worry. That the possibility that she was cheating on me remained in the back of my mind. When Claire got home from work, fitting for Jens, I was involved in a minor accident while preparing dinner as a dish of beans had slipped out of my hands and fallen to the floor. My usual calm was involved in cleaning up the mess and with the kids running around. I looked a little frazzled, so I don't suppose she noticed anything odd in my demeanor. After things had calmed down and the mess was cleaned up, I welcomed her with a kiss on the cheek as I usually did, and we sat down to eat. We usually chatted about our day as we ate, so I didn't think it would be unusual to ask about her upcoming trip. But are you off again in a couple of days? Oh yes, it's pretty much the same thing again. Hector, I'm not looking forward to it. If you don't like it, why don't you apply for a different position? You've been with them long enough and know enough about the company. You could fit in just about anywhere. I thought about it, but I want to stick it out a little longer before settling down to a desk job. I decided to prick her conscience a little. The kids and I miss you very much when you're gone. I know, and I'm sorry about that. I miss you too. So where are you going this time, and do you leave in the morning? So we can get together before you leave. I leered at her, mindful that the kids were listening. I thought I was doing a good job of acting, as though things were normal, although I was having a hard time eating with my stomach in turmoil. She obviously thought things were normal because she responded in kind. I wondered if her stomach was giving her problems, but she seemed to be eating without difficulty. Maybe I was wrong about her, but if I could search her case, I'd have a better feel for her fidelity. Once I'm only going to Denton, so I'll be leaving in the morning on a 7:30 flight, and I'll need something to tide me over till I get back on Friday. She winked back at me. That's good. I winked back, trying to act normal, and she blushed. That meant she'd be bringing the case home with her the evening before she left and wouldn't be going into work before she left for the airport. Her attitude about her trip in front of our kids and myself would seem to indicate she wasn't playing around when she was away, or she had grown accustomed to cheating. The briefcase would tell the story. I hoped. The evening before Claire left on her trip, she arrived home in good spirits and put her car next to mine in the garage, as usual. She seemed to be excited about something, and I wondered if it was in anticipation of sex with me or with someone else. She didn't bring her briefcase in with her, so I assumed it was out in her car. Except questions. I've been working on getting dinner, and as we sat down to eat, she asked me if I would get her suitcase out of the garage. Sure. Do you have everything you're going to need? Oh yes, it's just the usual trip. I have my briefcase in the car ready to go, and I'll just pack my bag with the usual things I need for a couple of nights away. Do you have anything planned while I'm away? No, the kids and I will just do our thing as we always do during the week. Maybe we could do something together as a family this weekend. That sounds good. I'll be looking forward to it. After dinner, she helped me clean up the table and the kitchen, then filled the dishwasher. After turning it on, she went to the bedroom to pack, and I headed to the garage to get her suitcase. While in the garage, I looked in her car but didn't see her briefcase, so I assumed she had it locked in her trunk. I anticipated this and had an idea to access it during the evening. Going back to the bedroom with her suitcase, I asked, "Where are the keys to your car? You have a tire that's low and probably has a slow leak. If I get it down to the gas station, I can get Jerry to fix it right away." She looked flustered for a minute and then reached for her purse. When she was handing me her keys, she asked, "Can't you just put the spare on?" "That's just for emergencies. See towards time to fix it, so I think that's what we should do." I told her as I headed back to the garage. Before she had a chance to think, quickly backing her car out of the garage, I headed down to the corner gas station that my high school buddy Jerry owned, and going into the front of one of his bays. I honked the horn, and he saw me opening the door and allowing me to drive in and close it behind me. "What's up, man? I'm supposed to be here getting a tire fixed, but I needed the time to check something else. Problems at home, maybe." I told him as I opened the trunk and removed Claire's briefcase, setting it on a workbench. I used the key to open it. "Well, I've got a customer, so have fun," Jerry told me as he headed back into the small convenience store he ran with his station. I very carefully began to search the case as I didn't want to disturb anything unnecessarily. Checking some pockets in the lid, my fingers found a package that I withdrew. My heart sank when I saw the open package of condoms. There were about 3 missing. My worst suspicions were confirmed. I put the package back where I found it, closed, and locked her case. Putting the case back in the trunk, I closed it and turned as Jerry came back. "Did you find what you were looking for?" "I'm afraid so. Can you let me hang here a little? Maybe you can check the air in her tires just so I can tell her I fixed the problem." "Okay, can do." He just looked at me funny but kept his mouth shut. He was a real friend. After his check, I backed out of the bay and pulled up to the gas pumps and filled the tank. No telling when I would ever do that again. I thanked Jerry for his hospitality and headed home. My thoughts were very darkened. I was on the verge of hyperventilating when I pulled back into our garage. I was feeling rage and frustration that she would do that to me, the kids, and our marriage. My thoughts then began to plan my next step. I would need to get final proof of her adulterous and immoral behavior to assure I would have custody of our kids. She was a good mother, and kids needed a mother, and I would allow visitations, but my goal was to have full legal custody. She would have to explain to her brother and friends why we divorced. Entering the house, I hollered back to the bedroom, "You're all set?" It was just a small nail. "Okay, thanks." I couldn't face her yet, so I went into the kitchen and got a beer, then went into the family room with the kids who were watching TV. It's about half an hour later. Claire came into the room and sat beside me on the couch. By then, I had a chance to cool down, although I felt really sad that this once happy family would soon be history. Claire slid over and snuggled up to me. "Are you ready for tonight?" she whispered in my ear. I took a swallow of my beer before answering. "I think so, but my stomach is acting up." "Oh, that's too bad, honey," she told me as she snuggled closer. I automatically put my arm around her shoulders and somehow felt some affection for her. I wondered why she did it. Was it for the excitement, or did she just need more affection than I could give her? Maybe I'll never know. We both put the kids to bed, and I looked at her as she kissed our 2 little angels goodnight. She'd be gone by the time they got up in the morning, but they weren't concerned because she traveled so much. At night, we made love. It wasn't passionate, but more of a goodbye intimacy. She felt my sadness. Is your stomach still bothering you, honey? Yes, but I'll survive. But do you really have to go on this trip? I asked, hoping that she would prioritize our love and our marriage. Maybe I was hoping it was all a nightmare and would all go away if she would stay home with us. I'm sorry, honey. This one is a must, and I'll try to break away and get home as soon as I can. I'm really looking forward to this weekend with you guys, okay? Ikis Perusians, I said with a sigh. Better get some sleep. You have to get up early to catch that plane. I'm going to have a quick shower first, then I won't have to do it in the morning, okay? While she was in the shower, I went over and looked in her suitcase to see what she packed. Most of the clothing on top was business-oriented, but underneath I found a stash of some of her more frivolous lingerie and the little black cocktail dress that I found so sexy. It looked like she was going to be a busy girl while she was away, carefully rearranging the suitcase as I found it. I closed the lid and got back into bed. I didn't sleep too well that night, and when I heard Claire get up about 5 a.m., I didn't get out of bed to say goodbye as I usually did. I knew I felt tired and sad at the same time. I knew the rage would begin to build later. Still not feeling well, sweetheart? She asked as she kissed me goodbye on the cheek as I lay there after I heard the garage door close as she left. I got up and went into the shower. I was going to have a busy day. After getting the kids off to school and having my breakfast, I got out the phone book and looked through the yellow pages for a private investigator service, specifically one that had affiliates around the country. I phoned a couple of them and found one that had an affiliate in Denton where Claire was going, and then made an appointment to meet with them that morning. I then looked up a divorce attorney that a friend had used in the past and was highly complimentary about. I called and made an appointment to see him in the afternoon. When I got to the PI's office, I arranged to have Claire watched in the evening when she was gone and to obtain whatever pictures they could and a report of her activities after her business was finished for the day. I brought along a picture of Claire and her itinerary so they wouldn't have trouble locating and identifying her. They said they would email the information to the office in Denton and have a report back to me by Monday morning. Oak told them that would be fine and placed a hefty advance with them for their services. They warned me that they would probably not be able to get pictures of them actually having intercourse, but they would try to provide as many incriminating pictures as possible. I told them I'd be satisfied with that. The afternoon appointment with the lawyer was as I'd hoped, and he told me that we were in a no-fault state as far as divorce was concerned, but that since I was the primary caregiver for our children, I would most likely be given custody, but I would have to face that Claire would be granted generous visiting times. Thus we would split assets 50-50, but no alimony since our incomes were approximately equal. Thus with me granted custody, but Claire would have to provide child support. Spreading the inheritance that Claire had received, she would retain all of that, which I didn't care about. Our kids were my primary concern. I told him to go ahead and prepare the paperwork and have it ready to serve on her by Monday based on irreconcilable differences. but I asked for a stipulation that Claire must move from our house immediately after being served. The lawyer said I would be within my rights as guardian of the children to ask for that. When the children turned 18, the house would be sold and we would share the selling price. I left the lawyer's office feeling satisfied that life would go on for me and the kids, and that Claire would reap the punishment she deserved for her infidelity. I didn't do anything with our finances, insurance, or will right away. I felt there would be time after she was served with her inheritance. I didn't think she had to worry about her share of our savings. Plus, it was almost time for the kids to get out of school, so I headed home to be there for them when the bus stopped. When she got back Friday afternoon, they offered to do her laundry for her, but she thanked me and said she'd take care of it later. And I just smiled to myself, thinking what a rotter I was to be teasing her like that. I knew why she wanted to do her own laundry. She had to hide her extramarital activities at all costs. In bed, she asked, "Is your stomach still bothering you, honey? Maybe you ought to see a doctor. It's been going on too long now." I thought I was being a little cute when I responded, "I'm going to try some new medicine a friend told me about, and that should solve my stomach problems." "Well, I hope so. I want you back as soon as possible," she told me as she spooned against me to go to sleep. God, I was going to miss her. It was Monday after the kids left for school, and Claire had gone to work when I got the call from the PI's office telling me they had a report ready for me. I told them I'd be right down, and half an hour later, I was sitting with the office manager. He told me the report had been faxed in that morning from Denton, and some photos had been sent. The photos had been sent also. He told me he hadn't had time to read it all, but what he had gotten from scanning it and looking at the pictures seemed to be damning. I took a copy of the report from him and began to read. Subject to Claire Barton. I picked up my observation of the subject, female, at 5:17 p.m. Wednesday. It's June 16th, in the lobby of the Denton Marriott. Identity was established by means of a photo received from the Merrickville office and a company name tag on the subject. Subject was carrying a briefcase and went into the elevators. My associate went up with her in the elevator and confirmed she went into her room 414 at 5:23. Subject was alone. A picture of the subject dressed before entering the room is provided as Exhibit 1A. I looked at the photo 1A and saw she was dressed in her business clothes. I could plainly see that she was wearing her rings. He or she must have taken the picture with a cell phone. So associate stayed in a room rented across the hall from the subject at 6:31. The subject alerted me that she had left the room, taking the elevator at 6:32. Subject exited the elevator into the lobby. She was dressed as noted in Exhibit 1B. Exhibit 1B photo showed Claire in her little black cocktail dress, high heels with a necklace I'd given her on our 10th anniversary, and looking like a tart on and proud. The photo had enough detail to reveal that she had no wedding rings on her left hand. Subject entered the dining room and had a light dinner with a glass of wine at 7:13. Subject left the dining room and entered an adjoining lounge where she took a seat at the bar and ordered a glass of wine at 7:17. Subject was approached by a single male and they talked for a few moments. See Exhibit 1EC. Exhibit 1C photo showed a tall, good-looking male standing talking with Claire at the bar. And after a few minutes of conversation, the subject nodded and followed the male to a booth near the dance floor. Subject spent 1 hour and 43 minutes with the male in the booth, danced 6 times with the male, and intimacies occurred. The exhibit wound. Exhibit on showed Claire and the male from the lounge entering her room. She looked a little tipsy, but very happy. At 11:13, the male left the subject's room and departed the building. But the license number of the male's car, the AMS, is registered to Alexander Byte, 1424 Azalea Drive. Mention: the male is married and has 2 infant children. I glanced through the rest of the story, and the report indicated that she repeated her activities the next night with a different man. It was signed by the investigator in Denton. My wife was a wench. She traveled away from home. There was no way I could tolerate what she was doing. Even the loss of her rings hadn't scared her enough to stop. After paying the PI the balance of my bill, I thanked him and left. I took 2 extra copies of the report on CD with me and drove straight home. At home, I immediately called the divorce lawyer and asked him where he stood on the divorce papers. He told me they were ready to file, and I told him to proceed with filing and asked if he could have them served publicly at her work the next day. He said that it wouldn't be a problem, and I provided him with her work address. But here I wanted to humiliate her, and having her served at work would go a long way to give me some revenge for what she'd been doing. We didn't make love that night. I think she knew something was wrong and made me realize I knew something but was afraid to voice her concerns other than to say she hoped I'd be better soon. Probably she seemed a little reticent in her own right, but I let it pass without comment. In the morning, I was up early as I hadn't slept too well during the night. I worked at my computer until I heard the kids' story, and then I went and started breakfast. After breakfast, I saw her off to work, and she came to me for a hug and a kiss before leaving for work. I gave her a half-hearted hug before urging her out the door. I think at that instant she knew. There were tears in her eyes as I closed the door behind her and whispered. I felt a great sadness overcome me as she left and wanted to cry myself, but the kids needed organizing so I could get them ready for the school bus. The call came at about 10:45. Caller ID said it was Claire's workplace, and I picked up the phone without acknowledging the call. There was a moment's pause while the caller accepted the fact I wasn't going to speak. "I'm so sorry," her voice said in a whisper, and then the line went dead, and I hung up. She didn't come home that night, and I wondered if she was playing her sick little game without worrying about a husband anymore. I knew I was being hard on her, but I retained a certain amount of justifiable rage. The kids wondered where Mommy was, but I took them out to Mickey D's for dinner, and by the time we got home, they were very tired and ready for bed. The next morning, she called, "Honey, can I come home and get some of my things? And can we talk?" At some seas, I felt a qualm of conscience, but it quickly passed. "Why don't you come between 9 and noon? That way the kids and I won't be here." As far as talking, I will talk with you one-on-one at my lawyer's office once you've signed, notarized, and returned the divorce papers. I will listen to anything you have to say then. Sasib then. All right, and the line went dead again. Epilogue, she signed the papers, and we were divorced, became final in 6 months. She'd been pregnant while ducking her last lover. The rubber had broken, and it was near her fertile time. So even though I discovered her adultery because she lost her ring, she would have most likely been found out anyway. I hear she's back in the dating scene too. I think if she gets close to marriage again, I'll give her husband to be a heads up on her faithfulness. No sense in having her fool 2 of us. We did have a meeting, as I told her, in my lawyer's office. She asked me to please give up on the divorce. Not having unlimited access to our kids was hard on her, but I told her I just couldn't trust her anymore. She explained she's been seeing a psychologist, and he's diagnosed her with a form of nymphomania. She had been receiving help in coping with her addiction, and she had her urges under control now. I told her that wasn't good enough for me. If she still had the urges, and if she'd sought help about her urges in the beginning, she wouldn't be in the position she was in now. I left her crying in the lawyer's office. I'm dating again, and I think I found a woman that I like, and I think I could easily fall in love with her. She's my age and a divorcee, caught her husband cheating, and wouldn't put up with it. Like my kind of woman. A big plus for her is that the kids like her too. I suppose it's only a matter of time until I pop the question. The end. This story has a powerful impact illustrating how mistrust and infidelity can destroy even the strongest relationships. It underscores the importance of honesty and communication in marriage, as well as the consequences of hidden actions. Story 2. I was a child and I knew I wanted to have a family of my own. I didn't like the family I grew up in, so I started to tell myself I would do better if I ever got the chance. In high school, I met the girl who would become my wife. It's on the nights when my stepdad felt like blaming me for the family's problems. She would meet me at the forsaken playground gazebo. She brought sleeping bags, pillows, snacks, and a tablet to watch movies on. That's it. It was lucky we lived in a southern state where sleeping outside wasn't a problem much of the year. Nothing ever bothered us in that gazebo, not even bugs. I was convinced at this point that she was my guardian angel, and I would marry her after the nonsense that high school was finally over. We got married at 18 years old. Her parents weren't thrilled, but they knew me for years at this point. They allowed us to live together in the basement of their house. Meanwhile, my wife was the sweetest, most understanding woman in the world. She truly loved me. She chose me to be her husband, so I made it my life goal to improve our lives together. We each started working. Neither of us liked our jobs very much, but it was just so we could start accumulating some money. My wife knew how to be selfless and get things done. After 10 months of working full-time, we had earned enough money to buy our own trailer home. It was considerably nicer and larger than the basement. Together, we could afford the lot rent and all the bills we acquired. My wife was lucky enough to get a job she wanted to work for the rest of her life. I, on the other hand, was diagnosed with early onset fibromyalgia. I had intense pain all over my body that was hard to ignore. I tried working through it, and I couldn't. I got a type of pain medicine meant to block the pain receptors, but this made me feel like I was in a dream and completely unable to focus on the tasks at hand. I felt stupid and worthless during this time. I stopped working and stayed in bed a lot. My wife was my rock and peace. She continued doing what she loved and started taking care of me when she got home. She cooked meals for me, washed my clothes, and vowed not to judge or hate me for what was happening. It was the kind of unconditional love I felt I didn't deserve but always wanted. Eventually, I felt well enough to start painting miniatures. These little game pieces and models are actually worth a lot of money when they're painted well. I never realized my knack for painting until this part of my life when I felt trapped in my own body. It was just what I needed to boost my confidence and finances. I was able to sell these figures for 4 times the amount I paid for them. My wife was extremely happy for me and encouraging. Things started to change when my wife realized how great it would be for us to start going on hikes and traveling together. I knew she was getting bored with the daily routine and needed to have some adventure, so I started taking her out on dates. Considering how I felt, I usually suggested things like restaurants, plays, darts, pottery, the cat cafe, or karaoke night at the bar on the corner. Sometimes even some of those took a lot of energy and brain power I just didn't have, but I did my best to show my wife I could be her man. 5 years after moving into the trailer, my wife didn't want to do these dates anymore. She really wanted to start going on hikes and doing things I just didn't want to do. I suggested she go without me and try to find a group of people to go with. She was all too willing to do them. It was like she was relieved that I suggested it. A few days later, she returned from what she claimed to be her first hiking trip with a group of people from an app she found. She was extremely happy when she told me about the hike, admitting that she mostly talked to one person who was extremely nice and outgoing. My wife called this friend a shy, but I wondered if she was lying because of how my wife spoke to me and made eye contact. I just told her I was glad she was happy and hoped that wherever she went, she would remember how much I loved her. She blushed, said she always would, and kissed me. A few days after that, my wife asked me why I never went out with any of my friends. I told her I didn't need any friends. I was an introverted loner and stronger for it. All I needed was myself and my wife. She smiled and went quiet. The very next day, she told me her dad needed help moving some stuff out of the basement. This was the exact kind of request I hated. I agreed to do it and headed to their house, knowing that it wasn't going to be pleasant. When I returned home, I could have sworn I saw a car back out of my driveway before speeding away. The timing was just close enough that I could see it from far away. I entered the house and asked my wife, who was just here. She froze in her tracks, looking like a deer in the headlights. She slowly told me that no one was here, it was just her. I looked around and smelled the air like I was some kind of hound. My wife's face was turning red even though her body didn't move. I searched the house and our bedroom for any clues while she remained silent. It was weird. I found half a footprint by the front door, like someone's shoes were wet and they stepped on the rug before taking them off. The shoe print didn't look like ours, but I couldn't rule it out. I sat on our bed and just had a gut feeling that something was wrong. My wife appeared in the doorway with her arms crossed. She called me Sherlock when she asked if I found anything. I walked up to her and tried to playfully pull her into the bed with me, but she refused, claiming she had to make dinner. 1 month later, my wife had gone on 2 more hiking trips. She took selfies with the group and supposedly pointed out the girl she'd been getting along with. Even though my wife had tried to suggest I get out of the house too. I didn't unless it was with her. I didn't feel right about leaving her in the house alone. I was painting in the spare room one evening, expecting my wife to get home much later. I felt a very faint thud on the floor. It was so faint that I thought it might have been the refrigerator or a kicking on. A few minutes later, I had a terrible urge to walk around the house. I went into the living room, looked out the window, and didn't see my wife's car in the driveway. I got a drink from the kitchen, and as soon as I started to head back to the spare room, I heard something. I really couldn't tell what it was, but I went to our bedroom door and found that it was locked. I was extremely confused because you can only lock the door from the inside. I got a lockpick and popped it open, which is when I heard my wife's worried voice. The door swung open, and I saw a naked man. I didn't recognize get off my wife, grab his clothes, and leap out of the open window. My wife was half covering herself with blankets, looking at me like a lost puppy. She started saying how sorry she was, but as soon as I started losing my mind asking her what the heck I just saw, she got defensive. She said I wasn't an adventurous or active man, which really bothered her. But with my voice cracking, that she 5 my teams, and is to stand, he asked her if that gave her the right to cheat on me, to break our vows in our own bedroom while I was in the other end of the house. She was crying hysterically, defending herself while also admitting she was wrong. My vision started to spin and I passed out. When I came to, she was crying over me. I told her to leave. She said she couldn't because she was my wife. I told her she wasn't anymore, so she went to call her mom. When her mom realized what happened, she told her daughter how despicable she was. She was whining beside herself until her mom showed up at my house. She asked me if I was going to divorce her daughter the way she deserved, and I said yes. She immediately went to start grabbing her essentials so she could move out. My wife was just screaming. She wouldn't stop saying sorry and begging me for another chance. I barely had the strength to look at her, and tell her how much she broke me. I didn't feel the intense love I had built for her over the years. It was immediately gone, leaving a gaping metaphorical hole. There's no sense in keeping tiny itty-bitty pieces of a shattered relationship. She didn't agree with my metaphor. She believed we could stay together, but only because she was the one that messed up. If it was me that messed up, she would have refused to forgive me. She admitted that in court when the judge asked her how she'd feel if it was the other way around. I was not ordered to pay alimony, and I got to keep my house. The joke's on her because I started making a crazy amount of money every month with my miniature painting. I invented my own group strategy game, which sold for over 6 figures. It's been years, and my wife is still single, living in the basement we started out at. I've remarried and handled my marriage in the same way I did my first one, except this time my wife is actually worth it. The story is filled with complex emotions and experiences. It explores themes of self-discovery and the search for meaning in relationships. The main character has faced challenges since childhood and has gone through much before finding himself and his place in the world. It is important to note his desire to improve life and relationships as well as his ability to adapt and make tough decisions. At the same time, the story evokes feelings of sympathy for the main character and disappointment in his ex-wife. It underscores the importance of communication and understanding in relationships, as well as the significance of self-respect and boundaries in personal life. Story 3. I grew to like her. The good thing was we were both single, and I was open to taking a chance with her. Right from my early teens, I had always loved intelligent girls who'd blow me off my feet with their super brains, and I believed my prayers were answered when I met my ex-wife. But I was wrong. We were friends for 7 months before I asked her out. I didn't want to wait any longer before someone else would take her away from me. Straight from the first month of our relationship, I'd felt we were made for each other. Even months after we started dating, the level at which she influenced me grew too, and many things changed in my life. We were the perfect couple, and every day I thanked God for meeting her. Such as of the time we met, Atili Aprafire FTS years. I was earning little, but I tried my best to gift her occasionally, even though they weren't expensive. I got her most of those books on business advertising and even one popular marketing book. The ads were everywhere. After about 2 years of dating, she got her lucky break. She was contacted to be a business consultant for a top company in our country, which turned things around for us. I worked as a marketer and tried my best to close big deals. Within the first 2 years of dating my ex-wife, I closed deals I could not close in 4 years. And although it wasn't a lot of money, it was a stepping stone for me. Shortly after that, things started to fall into place for us. I improved with marketing, persuading clients, and closing deals. She grew too. We married after dating for 3 years, and our lives continued improving. Before we remarried, we agreed not to have children until we reached a specific financial goal, and we didn't change the plan. We were driven by early success, and I believed that the same way famous, successful men and women had done it, we could do it too. For the first 3 years of our marriage, we put in a ton of effort, had sleepless nights, brainstormed together, started a business, and even sacrificed many things to achieve our dreams. The only luxury we had was the food we ate and the apartment we lived in. We owned a 2005 model car and invested every penny we made from our jobs and the business we were trying to grow. Luckily, we had the most significant break in the 4th year of our marriage. Sales skyrocketed and even top organizations knew about us. Conditional in our 4th year of marriage, we decided to go on a vacation, the first after our small honeymoon. I was so excited about it and happy because my dreams had become a reality. We were able to move into a bigger and more comfortable apartment, and our business was doing well. We increased the number of our remote staff, and everything could be handled even in our absence. The money was rolling in steadily, and I was glad my ex-wife and I could finally live the life we had been dreaming of. I envisioned our vacation to be mind-blowing, full of intimacy and rekindling our love. But it opened my eyes to a very painful truth that I can't get over to date. While we were on vacation, my ex-wife was still connecting to her yoga classes online. It was just a part of her I had to deal with. She was committed and never missed a day, whether sick or not. Up on the 3rd day of our vacation, after we had gone out that morning, we returned to the apartment and rested that afternoon. She said she was going for a walk and asked if I'd join her, but since I was still sleepy, I told her I would stay back and rest. Unfortunately, after she left, I couldn't sleep anymore and couldn't contact her because she didn't go out with her phone. I became bored and decided to play a game on her tablet. I didn't use my phone because I would wander off and spend the whole afternoon working or conversing with my staff. As soon as I started playing the game, a notification popped up, and it was from her yoga instructor. The last message he sent her read, "I love you," and had love emoji at the end, which I thought was odd. At first, I thought her yoga instructor was only being nice to her, but a part of me wanted to learn more. So I clicked on the message and it opened up their main WhatsApp chat. When I saw what was there, it made my heart bleed. I found messages that dated back a year, and there were all forms of voice notes between them. They also exchanged their nudes, said dirty things to each other, and would occasionally make jokes about other members of their yoga class. I could not believe that my ex-wife was cheating on me with her yoga instructor. And she hid it effortlessly because we were also so busy on our phones. I never suspected anything fishy was going on. I'd even found out that they were always meeting at different hotels to get intimate, and each time they were together, they made videos of them in bed or in the bathroom together. Later on that day, I realized that my ex-wife was not obsessed with yoga, but she was obsessed with her yoga instructor. She repeatedly told him she worshipped the ground he walked on and said things to him that she had never told me. Thanking to her messages, he was her spiritual guide and opened her eyes to the real truth. reading all those weird things and seeing pictures and videos of them together destroyed a part of me. Even if I had been told by a psychic that my wife was cheating or would cheat on me, I would not have believed it. I trusted her with everything, and I wanted more than anything to spend the rest of my life with her. When I had seen enough, I forwarded all the messages, pictures, and videos to my phone and cleared every trace that I had touched her phone. I returned to bed before she returned, but she could tell I was sad about something. She pressed to know what it was, and I lied to her that I had lost a mega deal and felt terrible about it. I pretended to be sick 2 days later, and our vacation was cut short. When we returned, I knew she wouldn't miss her yoga class the next night. And she didn't, an hour after she left that morning. I surprised her at her class and asked if I could play something on their general screen in her presence, and her yoga instructor agreed immediately. The first video started playing. Everyone gasped in surprise and turned to her and their yoga instructor. I watched my ex-wife stand there in confusion with tears in her eyes. She had tried to walk closer to me, but ended up running out of the hall in embarrassment. Her yoga instructor tried to hide his shame, but I played the recording too, and everyone saw their messages. It was such a big mess. When I got home, I realized that she had moved some of her things out of our room, and she left a small note which read, "I'm sorry," and that was the end of the road for us. We ended up divorcing and splitting every penny we made from the business. Exception, as for her yoga instructor, he was fired, and neither he nor my ex-wife dared show their faces at the facility again. I knew I could survive without her, but despite everything we had achieved together, I still hate her for doing. She couldn't even face me to apologize or something. She just dropped a note. We haven't spoken to each other since then, and it's been 2 years now, and I've still been struggling to move on. This story reflects deep disappointment and pain caused by the betrayal of a spouse. Adonis invested a lot in the relationship and dreamed of a shared future, but his trust was shattered. The protagonist's reaction to the betrayal is understandable given the context of his deep wound, but revenge rarely leads to true healing. As it is important to learn lessons from such situations and strive for honesty, openness, and communication in relationships.